Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast. Today, we're joined by Zach Lewis, CIO and CISO at University of Health Sciences and Pharmacy in St. Louis, and the author of the upcoming book, LockBit, Cybersecurity Threat Mitigation Lessons from a Real-World LockBit Ransomware Response. Zach, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Matt, for having me. I'm happy to be here.
It's great having you. Before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by cyberlynx.com. That's cyber, Lynx.com. Do you know if a hacker's in your system? Most people and most companies don't until it's too late and the hacker's already done damage. A hacker's job is to bypass your security, so companies need a way of knowing when someone's gotten past theirs. That's where CyberLynx comes in. We've partnered with the best cybersecurity companies in the world to provide our clients with the best solutions at the best prices. So whether it's managed SIM, SOC, EDR, MDR, XDR, you name it, we'll help you find the best solution at the best price. Find out more at cyberlynx.com. That's cyber, Lynx.com. And now back to our show. Zach, for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us about UHSP and your roles there as CIO and CISO?
Yeah, definitely. So the University of Health Sciences and Pharmacy is one of the oldest pharmacy schools in the country. They've been around like 162 years, give or take. I've been here almost 10 years in total. I've been serving as the CIO and CISO for about 5 of those. I've been here in a varying different roles from engineer to network and systems administration, director of help desk, and then sort of the IT team and all of CIO and security eventually after that. So it's been a good trip.
That's fantastic. Now, I'd love to talk about your your upcoming book. I think is it January 6th? Is that right?
Yeah, January 6th. That's right.
January 6th. Okay. So tell us about Locked Up.
Yeah, so Locked Up is a story of a ransomware incident that we actually had here at the university. We ran into a little LockBit ransomware incident a few years back. And pretty much I just try to tell the story of everything that happened. I give some background on the threat group LockBit. They were one of the most prolific ransomware groups of 2022 and 2023. They got taken down by the FBI in 24, and we're actually starting to see a little bit of a resurgence from them. I've seen some news that they're forming up with other ransomware groups, forming a bit of a cartel of sorts on the dark web. So we'll see how that plays out. But they came into our environment and sort of encrypted a lot of our data and try to exfiltrate information. And I just tell that story of where we were in our journey from, before the incident, everything that happened during that incident, decisions that were made, why we made them, who it affected, and walk people through that. And then at the end, I kind of wrap up with what we did to sort of remediate, bolster the security program, and then some best practice tips. All that to say is a lot of these ransomware attacks, data breaches, kind of get swept under the rug in terms of what people like to talk about or say. There's legal reasons for that. There's antitrust reasons for that. And there's not really a good roadmap out there. There's some of the big breaches get told, but really walking through an event, I think, is useful for practitioners as ransomware attacks grow every year. We're seeing the percentage increase every year. So giving someone, just a guiding path, everyone's going to be a little bit different, but a general framework of what's going on and some of the stuff you're going to run into, I think is really important.
I couldn't agree more. And we've had this conversation on the podcast a few times now where, CISOs all kind of agree that it's important that we communicate as a community about incidents. And so there's a lot of kind of private conversations, but publicly it tends to be very hush hush. And I think, you hit the nail on the head for legal reasons, but I think having it out there is really important so that others can learn from it. So how did you get past that, with the how did you get legal to bless off on it? What was that like?
Yeah, after the attack happened, I actually had mentioned to a few of the leadership team that I was going to present on this at different conferences, and they were like, "Oh, that's kind of interesting. No one really had a problem with that." And I found that at these conferences where I was presenting, I was getting a lot of questions. So after I'd finished presenting, people would come up to me and just have tons and tons of questions, and I was like, "All right, well, I clearly have something here. I need to do something with that." So I decided to start writing a book, and then I let the team know, "Hey, I'm going to write a book about the ransomware attack and cybersecurity in general. Everyone was kind of like, "Hey, that sounds great. That's cool. Can't wait to see it." And then when I finally got the contract with the publisher Wiley, I brought it to our general counsel, and I didn't have any experience with books, and I was like, "Hey, I'm writing this book about this attack. I need you to review this contract and make sure everything's legit. You guys don't have any problems with it." And I got some red lines, some notes about that, and we went back and forth, and it was cool. And that's pretty much how it happened. We had done a public disclosure about the incident to everyone. Again, I'm talking about it. We got general counsel looking over the contract, so I felt pretty good about that. And I'm just gonna say that's the good check mark, and we move forward with it. And I mean, keep marketing now. No one seems to have any issues, so I guess we're in the green.
That's fantastic. Well, okay. Well, that being the case, can you tell us, kind of walk us through the story a little bit? How did it happen? How did you guys find out? Give us the juicy, dramatic bits.
Yeah, I mean, it started with a phone call one morning that some of our environment, our on-prem environment, was down and unavailable. And we knew that we had a lot of end-of-life hardware, so we had refresh dates coming up. We had new equipment kind of on order for a lot of these pieces, and we were just waiting for it to come in. So we were coming right off of COVID. Supply chain, if people remember, was just terrible. Getting any equipment took forever, and we'd been waiting for a while. So I go into the office and we're trying to restore a bunch of our server environment. I'm working with our network director and everything. And over the span of a couple of days, we actually managed to stand the environment back up, doing some refreshes, some recovery mode booting. We get the server environment back up. We're running VMware, which is important for the story. And then we get everything back up for about 10 to 12 hours, and then it comes crashing back down. And at that point, we can't get anything restored. And we're looking in the root files of the hypervisor, which is the equipment that runs our virtual servers and everything. And we find a note, and it's a README note. And we open it, and it's the ransomware demand from the threat actors. And they've come in and ransomwared us. And what we think actually happened was they had come into our environment and they were trying to exfiltrate data. And at some point in there, whether they had tried to encrypt the system or they did something to knock the system offline. And when they saw us in there trying to poke around and restore things, I think they got, they figured we were onto them and they tripped the ransomware. That's after we brought everything back up. And then when that ransomware went off, it encrypted all of our root files on the hypervisor. So at that point, you have no security kind of running there. There's no EDR running there. There's nothing kind of watching that. So it's not just the server that's getting encrypted, but actually the boot files and everything else. So when that went down, we're kind of hosed, and not really a backup of that environment per se. So um, we reached out we stopped disaster recovery, moved into incident response, activated a bunch of resources, and contacted people, and we had threat negotiators come in, we had forensics teams come in, and really just trying to figure out how they got in and start recovering on whatever equipment we had at the time, which I note in the book, we needed something to stand up Active Directory. Like we had to get Active Directory back up for authentication. And we actually grabbed a gaming PC out of our esports department. We were like, this will be the most powerful Active Directory server that ever ran. And we kind of restored back to that to get going. But I mean, we ran into a lot of hurdles and a lot of issues at different points in that process, and that's kind of all talked about in the book. But all in all, I think it took almost, and we didn't have to close shop. I'll say that we didn't have to shut down operations. We were able to stay functional, but full
Wow.
recovery remediation to the endpoint was almost a 2-month period.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. That's did you ever find out how they got in? Was that
we did compromise credentials and coming in through a VPN.
mm,
Yeah,
yeah. Fun stuff. Okay.
it was very
That,
exciting.
yeah, no, and I think yeah. I mean that really that kind of battle hardening, the experience, right? I mean, until you're there and going through it, you don't know how you're gonna react really, right? It's just it really is. It's a battle hardening, right? You get yeah, you think about it, you plan for it, you prepare for it, but until the bullets start flying, you don't know exactly how well your plan's gonna hold up, how well the people are gonna hold up, the stress of it. So what was that like? The stress level,
yeah.
like kind of walk us through the human aspect of it as well. I mean, there's
Absolutely. We had actually ran a tabletop exercise in November. So the attack happened in April. In November the previous year, we had actually ran a tabletop with the leadership team and thought we had a pretty good grasp on everything. Like it went well. Like talked about who's going to, make public notifications and who's going to do this and who's going to approve that. And, hey, you got a good plan, right? Until it actually happens. And then you find out all kinds of curveballs get thrown at you. But I mean, it's high stress, right? I mean, I think the CISO role specifically, I mean, we're hired to handle this. Like you're not going to prevent it from happening. It's going to occur at some point. We hear that all the time. But I mean, we're here to work through that. We're here to have a plan. And unfortunately, ransomware has kind of become business as usual. That's part of operating a business. So it's good to have a plan and be able to pivot into that and work through it efficiently. And I think so. In the human element, the CISO is kind of that figurehead. We have to be calm. We have to be collected. We are the ones with the plan. And even though that plan may go sideways, sometimes we're able to pivot because you're going to have team members that have not gone through this. They're going to be freaking out. And you don't want a leader who's like, oh, what are we going to do? This is all over. This is a resume generating event. And, at the end of the day, it might be. But while you're working that incident, being calm, collected is going to get you through it. And just, being able to make a decision and lead the team, I think is really important for that. But expect a lot of late nights, a lot of long phone calls, a lot of work goes into it, whether it's just the forensic side of it or the recovery side of it. It's a lot. It takes a toll for sure.
Yeah. And when you say late nights, I mean, are you doing, 12-hour days, 18-hour days, pulling all-nighters? What did that look like for you guys?
So once the infrastructure went down, before we knew it was an attack, we had a couple. I had an all-nighter, and I know another one of my team members had an all-nighter, and we were kind of switching back and forth to get the environment stood back up. I don't have a huge team here, at least in terms of who understands how like the network works and the systems work. So we were kind of bouncing back and forth on who was doing all night and going home and resting and coming back and helping, etc. Then when we found the ransomware attack, I know the note, it was a pretty late night. You're under a lot of stress. You're just trying to figure out what's next. You're making phone calls to insurance and FBI, CISA, the leadership team, the board, trying to gather resources. And then I think that was on a Friday. And then, Saturday we're actually meeting. Like you can't wait. It's not like you're going to wait till Monday. Like you're going to work Saturday too and get the team together. So, I mean, just expect like all the time you have, like you got conferences you're canceling, you got trips you're canceling it. Like I called my wife the first night and was like, listen, we've had a ransomware attack. I'm probably going to be late. Like, and I also might be out of a job when this is over. Like
Yeah.
get strapped in. You don't know how this is going to work. And so just kind of prepping everyone of what's going to occur is important.
Well, and I think that's part of the big fear. I mean, obviously you're concerned about what's going to happen with the company and operations, right? The organization, but at the same time, it is like as the leader, it kind of the responsibility lands on you. And so I think a lot of people will naturally fear, well, this is how it ends here, right? Like
Mhm.
they're gonna let me go, they're gonna blame me. And so how did that play out for you? Was it surprisingly, supportive? Was it one of these, how was it that, it wasn't just head on the chopping block, right? And off you go. How'd that play out? And is that something that other people should kind of take comfort in and look to, to emulate?
Yeah, I think, we used to see that the CISO was the scapegoat a lot more. That used to be a lot more common. And that trend is starting to shift, and which is a good thing. I think having, someone who knows, you don't want to get rid of the guy who knows your environment, right? Like probably keep him around, at least get through things. And now that we see these attacks are becoming more common, I think as it is becoming part of the business process, unfortunately, businesses are just starting to see like, okay, this is going to happen. Again, the CISO's role is not to necessarily keep all the incidents from happening, but be able to recover and pivot during those incidents. And I think that's a very important distinction that a lot of people don't understand yet. It's still a very new role in terms of C-suite roles. Um, and changing what people think that job is supposed to be and what that role is supposed to do is important. So when I talk to my board, even prior to the event, we highlight like this is what's going on. This is what ransomware could happen. We bring in guest speakers. Hey, this is what's in the environment looks like. This is what the world is seeing. This is what the industry is seeing, and really painting that picture so they understand what to sort of expect if anything happens. I also know our board, which is different than some people's, obviously, but we have a CIO of a major uh, like pharmacy chain in America, and so being able to talk to him about it when it happened. He knows, he gets it. And then when you go into the board to tell them about this incident, you kind of have that partner in there who can be like, yeah, guys, this is part of business. I've seen it happen. Our CISO's got it under control. Zach's doing what he's supposed to do. We're going to be okay. And having that reassurance there from another member of the board was super great to have. I like to think that even if this had been a worse event than it ended up being, I would still be here. I don't know. We managed to mitigate a lot of the side effects, the negative parts of it, and recover pretty quickly. So that could be why I'm still here. If it had been worse, it might have gone differently. But I like to think that we had a good plan. We pivoted, we moved, and hopefully they value they value what I bring to the table and wanted to keep me around. So
It also sounds like one, you by doing the tabletop exercise, not too long before this happened, you've already kind of prepared their expectations and got their buy-in to, hey, look, this is a group project. We are all involved in this security. We're all involved in the process of playing defense and then responding to an attack, right? So I think a lot of organizations fail when they don't have that in place, and everybody's just like, yeah, well, obviously it's Zach. He's the head of this, and well, he screwed up, and that's how we're here. So let's get rid of Zach, right? But you've already got that buy-in. You've already got everybody talking. Everybody's already there, being a part of it. And so as you go through that, well, they're going through it with you. It's not like this is just on you. So you've already explained that these things can happen. This is and I think you're right. The fact that it's so frequent now that it's a part of business. I think that the shift in perspective of this is, you can be perfect, and if you do your job right, nobody will ever get in. That's crazy. I mean,
mhm.
that's nuts. When I was in military intelligence for 10 years before I got back into tech. And the interesting part was, even on the government's, now this, let's see, we're going back to like around 2000. Even then, now 25 years ago, on our secret network, right, the SIPRnet, we had over 10,000 attempts to get in a day back then on the SIPRnet. And we had to assume that, look, there are 10,000, attempts, they're getting in, right? So that's the presumption, and it was accurate, right? And so if somebody wants in and they want in badly enough, it doesn't matter what you're talking about, whether it's, Fort Knox type security. You can have all the security in the world, they're gonna find, if they're motivated enough, they're gonna find a way in. And it's really, like, as you mentioned before, about having that plan for what do we do if that happens. So I think you did a great job of preparing them for that. And it sounds like because you did that and they were already kind of bought in, and they're like, yeah, well, this is just business.
Yeah, the attack group LockBit, and I've told them this since I didn't know at the time until after we knew who the threat group was, but like they breached Boeing and stole information. They breached TSMC, the largest semiconductor group
Yeah.
on the planet. The UK, like Royal Ministry, like these are huge government entities or major corporations. We're just like small fish. So if they're getting hit too, not that it excuses it, but it's like they have resources, they have skills. Like they've been hit, and sort of since then, when I talk to the board or the exec team, I actually tell them how many times we're attacked, daily, weekly, and sort of yearly. Like, here's the picture: we have to be right 100% of the time, and they just have to be right one time. And so it's a big job, guys, right? Like,
Yeah. No, it really is. And I think that's really key is communicating. So when, you did a great job preparing them and communicating beforehand. What's the communication look like during? I mean, are during that, obviously everybody wants to know what's going on. Unfortunately, yours wasn't one that shut everything down, right? So you remained operational. So I think that's, one, a huge sigh of relief on everybody's part. But, two, I think that gives you some sort of kudos right out the gate that, oh, great, they didn't get everything, right? They didn't, shut us down completely. But at the same time, that you still have to be communicating. What was that like for you? Having to
yeah.
deal with putting out the fires and the communicating, how did you deal with that?
Yeah, so the first meeting was just more of a communication of what happened. Hey, we've had a cyber attack. This is what's going on. We're still gathering information. Um, that's about the extent of that first conversation on that first day. Now pivoting to second day, we're meeting with outside counsel who's been brought in who specializes sort of in cyber attacks, and we have um, threat negotiators and we have forensics teams, and they're all coming in as well, and they're all requesting different information. The leadership team, our incident response team is all kind of there learning what they need to do. And there's a bunch of stuff that's going on. So we mentioned we stayed operational. That's the first question. Like, do we have to shut our doors? What are we going to tell our students? Like, are we going to be able to teach? Are we going to be able to educate? Can research continue? Can, all this different stuff occur? Fortunately, I pivoted us to a very SaaS first environment over the last couple of years prior to this incident. So a lot of our stuff had been segmented just out of the nature of being SaaS based, which for our students was great. Like students and faculty had no clue. They were able to go to class, teach, submit homework, assignments, do quizzes, whatever, which was great. So once you can reassure that our main business driver is still functioning, everyone kind of like, whew, that's great. Then you pivot to what did they get? What's down, and then what did they steal, if anything? And you're trying to figure out, well, I think they wanted $1.5 million for, a few hundred gigs of data. And it's like, all right, well, what's in that data? And that spurs other conversations about what sort of sensitive information could be in there. What is it student information? Is it faculty staff? Is it, financial related? Is it research IP data? Different things there. So really trying to get your hands around that, which is really hard to answer in the first, couple of days. So you're meeting almost every day for the first couple of weeks, usually, depending on the severity. And that can start to pivot. You're giving pretty regular board updates. They're not in every call, but pretty regular updates to them. And just anytime new information out, you're getting together every day and just sharing that what you found, what's going on, what people need. So yeah, again, a lot of work. Forensics teams are wanting to install software. They're wanting to pull logs. They're trying to review stuff, figure out the scope, and then you got the negotiators who are, working with the threat actor group, trying to figure out what they need. Can we negotiate down? What kind of information do they have? Can we get some samples? It's a lot of moving pieces at one time.
So, in retrospect, right? And not to, I don't know if you want to give away the whole book or not here, but like in retrospect, in kind of preparation now for something like this, it's great that you've already got the forensic teams in place. You've already got, who to call. What's your advice to people, who haven't been through this, to prepare better, right?
Yeah, so definitely have an incident response plan. I mean, that's first. You need to kind of understand your environment. Where are your most critical systems? What do you need to operate? Where's your critical data? And where does it live? Kind of know those things first. So and then you're going to incorporate parts, I think, of your disaster recovery plan too. Like what do you have to have up to operate? Like those need to be the primary things you focus on restoring and getting them back. I think that's really important. In your plan, you need to have numbers that you're going to call. Do you have cyber insurance? How do you contact them? What are they going to do? Is there a specific order and time frame in which you have to contact them, and who you can contact after that? I'm a big proponent of contact using an IC3 form online and contacting the FBI and CISA. I think they're important. They're resources. CISA may be able to help you restore. They're not really hands-on keyboard, but they're going to offer some insights and guidance. The FBI is going to collect information, and maybe if you have to pay a ransom, they can sort of get some of that money back if they have all the information up front, account numbers, Bitcoin transfers, different stuff like that. Those are important to have that in your incident response plan. Any outside numbers you might need to contact for extra hands. Um, those are all really important stuff. Test your backups, probably a good idea. You should test those regularly, make sure you can restore. That's still about the best recovery method for ransomware that we have available to us. So make sure those work. And one thing I'll say we learned from our experience and the stories in the book, but is if you are running a password manager, make sure you can get to it. That's probably important because if you get encrypted and you're running a local manager and it's also encrypted, those really, hardcore secure local passwords are now also unavailable. So it makes recovery a lot more tricky when you don't have those. Maybe print some of those out and keep them in a safe somewhere, or put them on a thumb drive in a safe somewhere so you have a backup.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I'm a big fan of Keeper. I think they've got a great product and it's, cloud based, but they don't have access to your data, so they've been, I think, one of the very few, if not the only one so far to never have been breached as a password manager. So I think that they do. So a little shout out to Keeper because now that you mentioned password, because I think it's a solid product. I mean, maybe not for everybody, but yeah, just as far as password managers, I haven't found a better one, but I guess if you're doing thousands of people and and you can host it locally, you might save some money. But at the end of the day, like you said, that's a tough one. If that gets
Yeah.
that gets encrypted, nobody's got access to their passwords. That's
Yeah,
tough.
there's pros and cons to both. We have since migrated to a cloud-based password manager. There's a lot of news of those getting breached at different times, but I think I'd rather have it available to me when I need it than not have it available again. That was you talk about added stress when you think you can recover and go in. I'll just log in locally because Active Directory's down, and you're like, oh, I can't. It's gone. That didn't
And
come up
it's
in the
gone.
tabletop.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. And I love the phone numbers in the plan. And I think too many people overlook that. I could be wrong. But I've seen it so many times. You go through it and you do the tabletop exercise and it's like, yep, we'll call this person, we'll call this, and great. We call this agency. Okay. What's their number? Like, oh, let me go look it up. And then it's, I don't think it's so much of a plan. It's part of a plan, but I think it's much better when you've really thought it out and you've got all those details there. Because in the heat of the moment, so much better be like, yep, cool, here it is, and you just go down the list and it's all right there versus having to go somewhere, try to look it up. And I think for incident response, did you have somebody on retainer beforehand, or was it you had to engage somebody?
So we engaged, we have insurance, cyber insurance. So once we engaged them, they activated the response
Mm,
team through their channel. So that's our point of
right.
contact with insurance, and they activated what we have. And a note on that incident response plan is probably have a hard copy, right? Like you might store it digitally, and that's great. But again, if it's encrypted and you can't get to it, no good. We did have ours hard copied, and I think that document it was so helpful just to be able to look down and be like, well, what do I need to do? Because you're really stressed. There's a lot of stuff going on. You got a million things going through your head. Like step one, do this. Okay, I don't have to think about it. I'm gonna go do that. Step two, okay, I'll do that. And it gives you that framework and helps you as a leader, stay calm for the people. Like, hey, we have a plan, we're going to do this next, and then we're going to do this. And they're like, oh, okay, that sounds great. And at least that part's filled out. Like it might tweak a little bit and you can keep adding to it, but you have at least a skeletal framework of what you're supposed to be doing, which is super useful. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we've even gotten to the point now where like, hey, we restore, the environment's encrypted, our backup provider software. How do we install that? What are we going to run it on? Like put that in a scenario to get that back up. Oh, you need a license key to activate that. Where is it? Do you have that? I mean, it's great that you can look it up later, like in the moment, but do you want to be like looking for a license key in your email somewhere or trying to look up these phone numbers online? Like you don't want that. Like just put it in the document so you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Keep a copy of it somewhere safe.
Yeah, and you hit on something else that I thought was really great, which was getting the FBI involved. Because they may be able to get some of that money back. And I think unfortunately, with a lot of the financial crimes, it seems rather hopeless when you contact the FBI and it's just like nothing happens, right? There's a lot of business email compromise, and
Yeah.
it tends to be that nothing happens with it. The bad guys have gotten away with the money, which still blows my mind because with so many of them, you're talking about bank accounts in the US. Somebody went in with an ID. You know that person. Go get that person. How is this hard? Right? Like they what? And yet so many of these end up kind of, and I think it's because it's so prolific that it is hard to kind of there we have kind of limited resources on going after them. But I think that having your point of if you engage the FBI, they may be able to get back some of that money. How did that work out for you guys?
Yeah, so with the FBI side of things, I have a pretty good relationship with our local field office, and I would recommend that to any, practitioners or other CISOs in their area. Like reach out to your field office that kind of covers you guys, and just meet with them. You can be remotely, tell them about your environment, talk to them about your concerns. We've actually brought the FBI in to talk to our board about different stuff that they see in the industry, like form that relationship. There's different groups you can be involved with. InfraGard is a great group. They partner pretty closely with the FBI. I'm a member and officer here of our local chapter. I think that's a great way to just be involved, but get involved with them so when an attack does happen, that this isn't the first time you guys have met. Like you don't have to cover all that. Know them. I have several agents' numbers in my phone. I can text them if I have a question or need a problem. But in this instance, like I texted a couple, I sent an email in. One of our cyber agents contacted me, sent a form over of stuff that they wanted to collect. Do we have the ransom note? Yeah, here it is. Are we going to pay? Are we not going to pay? If you are, they want bank details. They want, Bitcoin wallets, different stuff like that. And then emails that came from the threat actor. What are those addresses? Different stuff like that. They're really collecting information so they can go after the threat group once they have a case. And I'm not going to say our case was the tipping point for LockBit, but less than a year later, the FBI, after we supplied information, the FBI was able to go after them, took down their website. They indicted a few people. They made a couple of arrests, which is really awesome to see that kind of happen. They actually get back a lot of decryption keys and help people that had been recently encrypted. So that's all part of case building and what they go after to try to bring these people down. And it's hard to do because they're in non-extradition countries. LockBit is very, Russia based. So good luck getting anyone out of there. And it's a very hard nut to crack a lot of times.
Yeah. I think that's amazing advice. And obviously, the FBI can't meet with everybody, every small business to large. But I mean, when you're a fair-sized business and there's a greater likelihood that you're a bigger target, it makes a lot of sense to build that relationship. I think that's really, sage advice there, for a lot of CISOs and CIOs is which that's the first time I'm hearing it. I think I think it's excellent advice. Meet your local, FBI agents who can be of assistance, beforehand. So you're not meeting them for the first time. Then they've got a face to the name. They got a relationship. I'm not saying that they wouldn't do it in an exceptional job regardless, but now they're I think they've got a face with the name. They've got somebody that they're actually trying to help, and you don't have to try to find that person. I think that's the biggest one is, even making that first contact, it can take time
Yeah.
initially.
And yeah, if you're a critical infrastructure organization, they will almost always meet with you and set up, especially if there's 16 critical infrastructure tiers. So if you fall into one of those, by all means, they're going to want to probably meet and understand your environment. And the same goes for CISA too. I know when we're recording this, the government is a bit shut down currently, and CISA resources may be a bit strained. But if you can meet your regional, rep for CISA, again, another great resource. They can give guidance on recovery and remediation and kind of give guidance there. Again, neither of these groups are going to put hands on keyboards to sort of like stand back up your environment, but they do have a lot of resources available. And in terms of resilience and proactive measures, CISA offers a lot of free resources from DNS monitoring and web vulnerability scanning and environment scanning, pen testing, and all sorts of different things that you can take advantage of for free, especially if you're in a critical infrastructure. So reach out there if you need extra tools, extra stuff for the security stack.
Great advice. Now, is there any other kind of lessons learned that you'd like to share? I know it's all in the book, and people should go get the book when it comes out. You can pre-order it now on Amazon, right?
Pre-order is available on Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes& and Noble, all the big book retailer places that one may shop.
Yeah, there you go. And hopefully everybody does go out and get a copy. I know I will. But what other advice would you give people now, kind of lessons learned that you also share in the book?
Yeah, I mean, some of the other interesting stuff there that came from us was one thing was about data, and just knowing where your data is and what's in it, who has access to it, which kind of kicked off a very large data governance journey for us. So we're in the process now of classifying everything and labeling it. I I don't want to ever be in the point again where someone's like, hey, 10 gigs is missing, 100 gigs is missing, or allegedly missing. Like, what's in it? And you're like, I don't know. Yeah, like, you don't want to be in that situation. So knowing where all that is, knowing where your most important, jewels are, crown jewels are, is super important. I think some other cool lessons learned for us was one big thing I'll say is takeaway is out of band communication. When you are attacked, we're going to make the assumption that the threat actors are still in our environment and they are watching emails and they are watching chats. So having some way to communicate with your incident response team, your leadership team, outside counsel is important. We stood up a bunch of Gmail accounts, and we did that very quickly. Now you could do that proactively and have that kept somewhere else if you want, but for us, we did it after the fact. We stood up Gmails, gave everyone access, and that's how we started doing communication to make sure that those weren't being monitored in any way. And that was a pretty cool little piece that we hadn't worked through in our incident response plan up to that date. So we've modified that. And then I don't know, I'm giving away all the good pieces. Who makes notification and when do you notify end users and the public and your internal stakeholders about what happened? And that's a very business specific and I can't tell you when or what is the best time to do that. That's very dependent on you, but having a plan and talking through that, like some people want to get out in front very early, and there's some, public sector stuff that says you have to do that in a certain time period. So follow that if there is, but like for our internal, we waited a little bit longer because we wanted to gather more information and be able to answer questions. So that was kind of our like understand the breadth of this attack and be able to answer those hard questions that our people are going to have. And while you might have leadership and the board support, I know once we told our end users, more staff and faculty, they were very upset with IT and security at that point, thinking we had lost all their data. I remember people going like, I had, the listing of all my assets in my house. Or is the threat actor going to look at that and, come and try to rob me? And I'm like, well, I mean, they're not like burglars, but, like they don't understand the scope of this or where these people are or how they operate. So it can be scary for them. It's not just like getting a letter in the mail saying they have credit reporting and not telling you what was taken, but here they're, my personal share was taken and I had pictures of my family in there. Like, are they safe? And I'm like, I mean, yeah, I mean, as far as I know, they are, like, it's,
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
I think that psychologically there is, it's impactful on everybody involved, right? They feel violated, and it's tough, right? We become very very used to this sense of security that we store all of our photos and information on these devices, and when that sense of security is stripped from us, I think it has a real psychological impact on people. They feel violated, and they feel
sure.
threatened and scared. And so, that's kind of what you're describing there. I mean, and what was the, how did you manage that? Was it, kind of like a large communication? Was it kind of, you know, town hall meetings, getting people together and, and talking about it and trying to reassure them? How did that work? And then how much late, how long did that go on for, where that people were still, kind of, shell shocked?
Yeah. That we actually had a town hall pretty soon after the event, and it wasn't because of the event we were having. It was already kind of pre-planned, but during that, I remember people standing up and being like, we want to know what the deal is with IT, why are they having so many issues? It's like, okay, there's a lot more to that than what you're making it seem. And fortunately, actually some of the leadership handled that, and they didn't even need me to come up and like speak to it. They were able to handle it very deftly and sort of politically in a nice way and kind of hush that down. But like a lot of individual people I spoke with who had concerns, whether they emailed me or came by my office, and a lot of that was just sitting with them and kind of explaining how these groups work, what they're after, what they're looking for. I will tell you, it is not the time to tell them like, hey, you really shouldn't have stored your personal stuff on the work information. Like, not the time to preach policy to them.
While
So it's really
true.
yeah. While true, yes, definitely. You can reiterate that later in a mass email, but just, I think it's talking to them, kind of walking them through how these attacks happen and what they're looking for and just being a sounding board and trying to answer their questions is important. I don't know, you said something else in there. I wanted to answer it that I thought was really good, but I can't remember what it
Ah, it's
was.
quite all right. It was a long question. And well, and were those effects, was it kind of
Yeah.
just like one and done, or did you see them still like, shell shocked, you know, yeah, months later?
Yeah, I think anyone should be prepared that when that happens, that any problem that occurs after you've made an announcement is always because of the breach, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, it was in an interesting time because there's a lot of stuff going on. We'll touch on that in just a second, but we had people that were like, my, TIAA, which is the investment, like they have
Uh-huh.
my investments were money is missing out of my investments, and we think this is because of the breach. It's like, well, that's not related. The systems aren't tied together anyway. Like any problem anyone had, anywhere in their life, my roof is leaking. This is because of the data breach. Like it all sort of comes out. So navigating that becomes really weird too. But it
Yeah.
right after our announcement and we sort of remediate and things are better, like the move it breach happens and we have like three or four more companies get hit by move it. So then you're like, all right, uh all these accounts have been compromised, like this account has been compromised. We're doing like one a week at this point. And it's like, this isn't because of our thing, this is different, but all those also these got hit, but we don't control that. But know that it happened and it could affect you. Like it was just the worst time.
Yeah.
Public trust is at a low, and then you have all these other companies getting hit from something you can't control, and it was just like a real pain.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think it's really funny how how long they attribute that to it. I mean, it's
So
like
long.
it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's ransomware, anytime there's some sort of incident, it's like, oh, it's because of that. And so yeah, that goes on for a while until that trust is kind of until they rebuild that sense of stability and safety, right? Okay, well, being a huge geek, I love the all the new toys, the new products, and when it comes to this stuff, were there toys like I'm a huge like my new favorite thing is Dark Trace. I love the how they implement AI in security, and so I love that whole aspect. I think that's kind of the future of security is obviously AI. The bad guys are using it, so the good guys have to use tools to fight the bad guys. It's fight fire with fire. So for you, were these cool new toys that you brought in? Were like, this is cool. I'm glad. And did it help kind of loosen the purse strings? I know I'm hitting you with these large questions now
Yeah.
too. You're like, okay, got to remember this, that. But like, so cool new toys, and was it easier to get those toys afterwards?
Right. So again, never let a good crisis go to waste.
That's right.
Definitely, cash in on that when you can. Budgets are already tight, so if you can get a little bit more, then the better. Yeah, we implemented an island enterprise browser after the fact. Again, we're a very SaaS first, cloud first company, so you got to think like for us, browser, putting security at the browser makes a lot of sense because everything is on the cloud. We want people to access it from everywhere, so. We rolled that guy out, and it's been very good. We also I talked about data earlier. We rolled out a data platform or data security platform manager, posture management. Sorry, there it is.
Yeah.
Acronyms. Concentric AI, and we were very happy with it. So we've been tagging our data, going on a big data governance journey that I mentioned earlier. Those were the big two. We've since also we're looking at a company that's still in stealth right now, doing some AI DLP type stuff, which is kind of cool. Doing a little design partnership type thing there, and figuring that out. But I think Island and Concentric were the big two pieces we brought in after the fact, and we've since been able to sunset a few other tools and kind of reallocate some dollars. But we did get a little bit of an influx to purchase a couple because the board asked, "What do we need to not have this happen again?" And whether it's planned projects that we already had on the horizon that we were just moving up, or something that we really needed to fix the problem, um, I think it is the best time to probably turn that screw and make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, a bit of a double-edged sword there, right? Because you get offered, hey, what do you need to prevent this from happening again? You want to take advantage of that opportunity at the same time. It's like,
Yeah,
look, just so we're clear, like this isn't gonna, this doesn't bulletproof us. There's not, it's something that it will certainly help in the fight, right?
yeah,
And I think getting people to understand that cybersecurity is a process. It is not a state, right? You can't just be like, yeah, we're cyber secure. Nobody can get, the bad guys can't get in. No, yeah, right. We need layers of protection, and we need everybody to be, to be vigilant, and we all have to go through this process together. But yes, yes, please, I will take that money and
Yeah.
allocate it to good use. Thank you very much.
Just be
Um,
sure you don't get breached through the exact same method after you take that money. Like at least make sure
yes.
that's like closed up. Like, oh, it's not going to be that way. It'll be a different way, but not that way. You don't want that to happen. And it's funny you say that there's a layered approach there. And I mean, on the IT side of the house, we've always been a multi-year contract sort of department where we're like, hey, get a little cost savings. We'll do a multi-year plan. It's great. And I'm actually kind of saying on the security side not to do that anymore. I almost want just yearly things because stuff changes so fast and attack vectors change and methods change. Like, I don't want to be locked into something maybe for 5 years or whatever. I might need that money to allocate somewhere else and close another hole somewhere. So we're trying to become a little bit more agile on the security side with how we manage all those tools and you don't want a lot of tools. So anytime we bring one on, we do try to sunset another one because again, the team's not big, and if we have too much tool sprawl, nothing's getting done right, nothing's getting used properly. So we're trying to get as much juice worth the squeeze sort ofness out of every tool we have and keep that stack relatively small and contained, but only the essentials there.
Yeah, I love that. And I think even the challenge is even when you do have a big team, that tool sprawl, can be challenging, even, for the team and for the end users, and making sure that it's actually, working and you're not just buying, because there are plenty of examples of companies that have bought all the tools and okay, you've got a million tools, but you're not good at using even one of them. It's kind of that, you've got to be an expert in all your tools, have them set properly, be great at using them, right? Have the basics covered before you try to get all advanced by, having 100 different tools. Great. The tools were there, but they didn't protect you because they weren't set up
Yeah.
properly and you're not good at using them. So,
Yeah, if
I
it could
think
have stopped something and you just didn't have it tuned right or set it like that sucks, right? Like
that
that's
that
no good.
exactly. You spent the money, it was right there, and yep. No, so I think that's really smart, kind of like a you know, one in, one out kind of approach, where feasible. I think that's a really great way of going about it. Um, Zach, this has been an absolute blast. I think this is a really great topic that really needs to be discussed more with, in the industry and outside of the industry. So I'm really excited about your book. Looking forward to it. Locked Up, January 6th. But can you before we go, can you tell everybody where they can find out more about you and again where they can get a copy of your book?
Yeah, definitely. So find me on LinkedIn, Zachary Lewis. I post there all the time. So follow me there. I do have a website, homesteadingciso.com. That's a topic for another time, Matt, for sure. But you can visit me there where there's posts and all my recent media stuff. And the book is available Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes and Noble, all the other places, Target. I don't know where we buy books. It's all there. Locked Up Cybersecurity Threat Mitigation Lessons from a Real World LockBit Ransomware Response. I picked the longest title possible. But yeah, January 6th, grab it. If you have questions, shoot me a message. Happy to answer anything anyone has.
That's awesome. Well, best of luck with the book, and maybe you come back on after it's released, and we'll have a follow-up episode. But until
Awesome.
then, thanks.
Cool. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.